Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of my channel. Today we will be beginning a new sort of sub-series where we will be exploring island ecosystems both around now and around in prehistoric times. Every single one is decided by you guys, and the winner for our first voting was Lord Howe Island. So let's look at this island a bit further and examine its biogeography. Lord Howe Island is just a simple island at first, off the coast of New South Wales, Australia. More specifically, 780 kilometres northwest of Sydney, which is the capital of New South Wales. As of 2024, the island is very small, at only 14.55 kilometres square, or 3,600 acres. This isolation and small size mean that it has given rise to a couple of unique species. But of course, being an island ecosystem, not every animal can get here. Lord Howe Island was first colonised by the British. This was on 17th of Feb 1788, and the island was permanently settled about 46 years later in 1834. And aside from the colonists themselves occasionally hunting birds and grabbing them by hand, the worst ecological disaster the island would ever face was about to occur. A ship carrying accidentally introduced mice sunk around 1850. This was unfortunate, as many of the inhabitants I'll discuss later were ground-dwelling birds, insects and reptiles, which had few if any predators on the ground until mice and rats arrived. Rats were actually introduced around 70 years later in 1918, after they too escaped a sinking ship. A little while later, cats, goats and pigs were also introduced into the Lord Howe Island ecosystem, and the goats killed off so many plants. The island was beginning to be stripped barren, along with the pigs, which would eat birds' nests and eggs. The cats would do this same thing, along with all other reptiles and insects, which would also be prey for every invader. This is a phenomenon known as island tameness, where animals become more tame over time the more isolated they get, as they don't need to worry too much about predators. And even if birds and bats are still able to fly, they can be caught off guard as they continue to lay their eggs on the ground, meaning that their eggs are vulnerable as well. Not only did many birds go extinct, but it was also feared that the Lord Howe stick insect, an endemic species of stick insect, went extinct. The declared extinction was thought to be around 1920, and if it had actually gone extinct, which it didn't, it would have been the only member of its genus. Wiping out an entire genus of invertebrates would have happened if it weren't for its rediscovery. 81 years after their presumed extinction in 2001, a small team of scientists arrived at Ball's Pyramid, where they found feces and eggs of presumed insects, along with exoskeletons that had been shedded. It was thought that these could be from a living insect. However, these discoveries were made well before this 2001 expedition, over 40 years after the insect was thought to have gone extinct, which would still have placed around the 1960s. In the 2001 expedition, Ball's Pyramid was examined extensively by the scientists, and they managed to photograph 3 insects, all feasting on the vegetation found on the pyramid. It was estimated that anywhere from 24 to as many as 40 insects were living on the pyramid, but the insects were probably going to go extinct without human intervention. 2 pairs of the insect were taken, both breeding. A failed breeding pair went to a private collector, and the Melbourne Zoo of Victoria received another pair. This time, the pair were able to lay 50 eggs and have the exact same amount of offspring. This meant that the pair in Melbourne Museum had laid more eggs than all living insects on Ball's Pyramid, outnumbering them by at least 20%, or 10 individuals. Around this same time, goats, cats and pigs were beginning to be eradicated from the main Lord Howe Island, and mice and rabbits were also being killed off. It took a little bit longer to kill off rats. However, in 2019, rats were heavily killed off using poisons. All native bird species were taken off the island first, before these poisons were eventually spread all over the island. After the poison began to die down, were these birds reintroduced. Since 2019, only 3 rats have been seen. In April of 2021, a breeding pair were found, a pregnant female and a male. While in August of 2022, another rat was seen, though no rats have been seen for the past year or so. This means that not only would all invasive species be gone, but now the island can begin to recover its biodiversity. Let's talk about this biodiversity, and let's talk about some of the species that once and still do inhabit Lord Howe Island. The best example of island tameness would probably have to be the Lord Howe pigeon, also known as the white-throated pigeon. These birds were reportedly super easy to capture. You could literally grab them and then harm them in any sort of way. They wouldn't fight back. After being discovered in 1788, one painting was drawn. If it weren't for this painting, there would be no concrete evidence for the bird's existence. And it is because of this painting that we even know the bird existed at all. It was believed to have gone extinct around the 1850s. No physical specimen was ever obtained. Another extinct bird is the Lord Howe swamp hen, also known as the white swamp hen. Some individuals are white, some blue, and some both. 2 specimens have been collected, so there is actual concrete confirmed evidence that the bird existed, along with some paintings taken of it when it was alive. These birds also may have exhibited insular gigantism, which is where an organism gets larger in an isolated environment. These birds grew to around 1 foot to 2 feet long, or around 30 to 60 centimeters long. This is a little bit larger than many other species of swamp hen. Sadly, the species was likely completely extinct by 1830. Fortunately, there are still some living birds that remain from before the 1780s. The Lord Howe woodhen is a flightless bird in the rail family. Went from just 15 individuals in 1980 to 780 birds today. Along with species, there are many endemic subspecies, such as the Lord Howe kurong, which is a type of bird closely related to ravens and crows. This bird also has 40 mature breeding pairs, live on Lord Howe Island right now. The reason for so many endemic birds and pretty much no endemic mammals today is because birds can actually fly, sometimes long distances to go over the Pacific Ocean and onto Lord Howe Island. This means that on the majority of Pacific islands, there will most likely be an environment dominated by birds, and bats are the only mammals on most islands. This is true, as only one Lord Howe mammal has ever been discovered. In 1972, a bat skull was discovered, and the species was named the Lord Howe long-eared bat. The species is presumed extinct, and only one skull has ever been found. This officially means that there are no endemic mammal species on Lord Howe Island, and excluding humans, there are no mammals in general. There are 2 endemic land reptiles, the Lord Howe skink and the Lord Howe gecko, both of whom, like many other endemic residents of the ecosystem, were once on the brink of extinction, but today have had a massive recovery. Interestingly, there was even once a giant species of turtle, in a way. Mailania platycaps, which is the smallest species of Mailania, is an extinct species that resembled a turtle, but is only distantly related. Mailania as a genus lived purely in Oceania, with some larger species living in Australia, Tasmania, and occasionally Papua New Guinea. But Mailania platycaps, known from the most specimens of every species, has only ever been found on Lord Howe Island. The very strange and peculiar part is that Lord Howe Island is not big enough for such a large species to live on with a large enough population to breed. However, the extinction theory for Mailania, according to most sources, is sea level rise from the end of the last ice age roughly 10,000 years ago. This would make sense, seeing as Lord Howe Island today is too hilly for any large animal to exist, especially turtles or turtle mimics. And this would have likely made Mailania platycaps the largest terrestrial animal endemic to Lord Howe Island, as it could grow up to 1 metre in length. There are also 3 snail species and 1 cockroach, all endemic to Lord Howe Island, plus the Lord Howe stick insect. Overall, if we were to look at Lord Howe Island's biogeography, we would find some standouts in terms of island dwarfism and island tameness. This island might only be 5 square miles, but in this limited space, evolution has created some remarkable species, and subspecies for that matter. There are very few places on Earth like Lord Howe Island. I also like golf, and thankfully for me there's a 9-hole golf course, along with a Great Barrier Reef style reef, and a very small population of less than 400 locals. Anyway, thank you guys all for watching. In my opinion, Lord Howe Island serves as a reminder that not all island ecosystems are dead, and that for bigger island ecosystems such as Hawaii, the Galapagos and New Zealand, there is hope for conservation. Let's make sure we protect all remaining island ecosystems and learn from our mistakes in the future. Bye.